An apparently suicidal mechanic stole an empty passenger plane from the Seattle-Tacoma airport, took it for a brief flight, and then crashed it in an incident officials said was unrelated to terrorism. And roads become rivers as torrential monsoon rains pound Metro Manila. A California jury ordered chemical giant Monsanto to pay nearly $290 million for failing to warn a dying groundskeeper that its weed killer Roundup might cause cancer.
I just want to thank.
And NASA postpones until early Sunday the launch of its unmanned Parker solar probe, the first ever spacecraft to fly directly towards the sun to investigate its atmosphere after a gaseous helium pressure alarm sounded shortly before liftoff. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to the program, and now to the news. An apparently suicidal mechanic stole an empty passenger plane from the Seattle-Tacoma airport late Friday, took it for a brief flight, and then crashed it in an incident officials said was unrelated to terrorism. Two military F-15s were scrambled to chase the stolen plane, but local officials said the jets were not involved in the crash. Video taken by a bystander showed the passenger plane making an unlikely upside-down aerial loop and then flying low over Puget Sound before crashing into the sparsely populated Catron Island in the northwestern U.S. state of Washington. The crash sparked a fire in the dense forest. The flames lit up the night as they spread from the burning wreckage to nearby trees. The stolen plane was a twin-engine turboprop Q400 airplane belonging to its sister carrier Horizon Air. According to Alaska Airlines, it normally carries 76 passengers. The suspect was identified as a 29-year-old airline mechanic and Pierce County resident who, quote, acted alone. Meanwhile, the suicidal mechanic who stole an empty passenger plane from the Seattle-Tacoma airport and then took it for a brief flight and then crashed it in an incident officials said was unrelated to terrorism. Here's what the authorities had to say. Take a look.
I too saw some military jets scrambling. I think they were probably concerned that this may have been something more serious than just someone stealing an airplane and then doing stunts in the airplane. So as I think your broadcasters have indicated, there's no indication that this was an attack of any kind or a terrorist act of any kind. It apparently was somebody who did something wrong, did something foolish, and may well have paid with his life. We understand at this point there is probably only one casualty, most likely, and that's the person who was flying the plane. Exactly the circumstances of why this person was flying a small commercial plane with props, I have no idea. Apparently it came from SeaTac Airport.
Now, this was the video taken by a bystander showing the suicidal mechanic stealing an empty passenger plane from the Seattle-Tacoma airport. He took it for a brief flight and then he crashed it in an incident officials you just heard is unrelated to terrorism. This video showed the aircraft doing large loops and other dangerous maneuvers as the sun set. The plane was chased by two military F-15 aircraft, but they were reportedly not involved in the crash on Catron Island, southwest of Tacoma in Puget Sound, which sparked a fire in the dense forest. The man could be heard on audio recordings telling aircraft controllers he's just a broken guy. Witnesses reported seeing the plane being chased by military aircraft near the airport. Witness Royal King told the Seattle Times he was photographing a wedding when he saw the low-flying turboprop being chased by two F-15s. He said he didn't see the crash but saw smoke. Take a look.
That is so bizarre. Okay, so I'm down here at Chambers Bay. There are two F-15 fighters up circling around, and there was just a two-engine prop plane, like an old transport, flying around. He just came off to my right here over the water toward where I'm standing, pulled the stick straight up, or straight back, practically went straight up in the air. Then he went over here where you see that smoke, and that's where I last saw him at. I turned back, hear a big loud explosion, and now there's this big pall of smoke. So I don't know what just happened. I hope that wasn't a crash.
Meanwhile, Horizon Air COO Constance von Mullen issued a video statement describing the incident. Let's take a listen.
Good evening. I'm Constance von Mullen, the Horizon Air Chief Operating Officer. I'm sorry to share with you this evening that at approximately 8 p.m., one of our Q400 airplanes made an unauthorized takeoff from SeaTac Airport. We believe it was taken by a single Horizon Air employee and that no other passengers or crew were on board. Shortly thereafter, it crashed near Ketron Island by South Tacoma. Our hearts are with the family of the individual aboard, as well as all our Alaska Air and Horizon Air employees. We will provide more information as it becomes available.
To Japan now, all 9 people aboard a rescue helicopter which crashed in a mountainous area in central Japan during a training flight have been confirmed dead. Police and troops organized a search and rescue operation after the helicopter plunged into a forest in Gunma Prefecture northwest of Tokyo. The victims were disaster management officials and firefighters, as well as the pilot and an aviation mechanic. The Bell 412 helicopter left its base Friday morning on a 2-hour flight to observe climbing routes from the air, but didn't return and lost contact with air traffic control.
I heard the sound of a helicopter coming from the fog. It was getting louder and louder. Then I saw it. It appeared right in front of my eyes, so it must have been really close.
In February, 2 pilots were killed in a military helicopter crash in southern Japan. The helicopter went down 7 minutes after takeoff, slamming into and setting fire to a house which was completely destroyed in the accident. Last year, 9 people aboard the helicopter were killed after it crashed during a mountain rescue drill. In other news, strong torrential rains brought about by monsoon rains flooded many parts of Metro Manila Saturday, stranding thousands of passengers and putting vehicles on a standstill. Now, Pagasa issued a red rainfall warning level at 2 p.m. for Metro Manila and Rizal, with serious flooding expected in flood-prone areas. Now, a red rainfall warning level means more than 30 millimeters of rain have been observed within an hour. Roads became rivers in many parts of Quezon City, for instance. Now, boats were used to transport stranded passengers as vehicles could not pass these inundated roads. In Manila, after a heavy downpour Saturday morning, Manila Bay overflowed, reaching the stretch of Rojas Boulevard, causing floods and monstrous traffic. Large parts of Luzon are experiencing monsoon rains enhanced by Typhoon Carding. As of 10 a.m., Carding was already outside the Philippine area of responsibility. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies is appealing for $9 million to provide emergency aid to some 80,000 survivors of 2 devastating earthquakes that have flattened large swaths of Indonesia's tourist island of Lombok. The death toll from Sunday's quake now stands at more than 380, according to Indonesia's UNTARA news agency. Now, it's predicted the death toll will continue to grow because there are still victims who are suspected of being buried by landslides and under rubble, and there are victims that have not been recorded and reported to posts, according to National Disaster Agency spokesman Sutopo Purwo Nugroho. Red Cross teams are still assessing the extent of the damage caused by the magnitude 6.9 earthquake. Sunday's quake, which followed a smaller one July 29, has caused widespread devastation affecting an estimated 600,000 people. The Red Cross describes the damage in North Lombok as exceptionally destructive, with 75% of the buildings in some villages damaged or turned into rubble. The Red Cross also reports some of the thousands of families forced to flee their homes are staying in evacuation centers or in makeshift camps in open areas. The agency says its appeal will provide emergency shelter supplies as well as materials for repairing and rebuilding damaged houses. Now, earlier, ASEAN Secretary General Datu Lim Jock Hoi reaffirmed ASEAN and ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance on Disaster Management, or AHA Center's commitment to support Indonesia.
I would like to offer Ibu Ratno and the government and the people of Indonesia my sincere condolences to the victim of the recent earthquake in Lombok. I assure you that ASEAN Secretariat and ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance, AHA, stand ready and committed to lend our support as guided by the spirit of One ASEAN, One Response. ASEAN Day is about celebrating solidarity across borders, and what this means to our people by the way of enhancing community outreach and cooperation, whether economic, political, social security.
Now, earlier, a third strong earthquake, a magnitude 6.2 earthquake, rocked Indonesia's Lombok Island and the neighboring island of Bali last Thursday. It caused instant panic. According to Indonesia's meteorological agency, Thursday's earthquake struck at a depth of 12.5 miles, originating several miles northwest of Lombok. People in Bali, an island 93 miles from Lombok, also reported feeling the quake. Rescuers are finding some remote areas hard to reach because bridges and roads have been destroyed by the earthquake. On Sunday, a powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake devastated the tourist island, which has led to the deaths of at least 380. Officials have said that the death toll will likely rise as rescuers continue to sift through the rubble. Indonesia is prone to earthquakes as it is situated in the Ring of Fire, an area in the basin of the Pacific Ocean where many tremors and volcanic eruptions occur. Now, scientists say the powerful Indonesian earthquake that killed more than 380 people lifted the island it struck by as much as 25 centimeters. Using satellite images of Lombok from the days following the quake, scientists from NASA and the California Institute of Technology's Joint Rapid Imaging Project made a ground deformation map and measured changes in the island's surface. Now, in the northwest of the island near the epicenter, the rupturing fault line lifted the earth by 1/4 meter. In other places, it dropped by 5 to 15 centimeters. Lombok, a popular and less developed tourist destination than neighboring Bali, was hit by 3 strong earthquakes in a little over a week and has endured more than 500 aftershocks. An airstrike on a busy market area in Yemen that reportedly killed scores of people, including 29 children, on a bus is likely the worst attack on youngsters in the conflict so far, and just the latest in a recent spate of violence targeting civilians, according to UN agencies. According to the UN Human Rights Office and UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, at least 29 boys died when their coach was hit on Thursday in Sada in the north of the country. More than 30 boys were also injured in the strike, which was carried out by a Saudi-led international coalition that backs Yemen President Abu Rabu Mansur Hadi against Houthi opposition forces. Here's UNICEF spokesperson Christophe Boyurac.
We believe, UNICEF, that this is the single worst attack since 2015. The bus attack No such number of children have been involved in one incident before.
The development follows condemnation of the incident by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who called for an independent and prompt investigation into the matter.
The members of the Security Council met and heard a briefing from the Assistant Secretary General on the recent attacks in Sada, which resulted in large numbers of civilian casualties, including children. They expressed their grave concern at these and all other recent attacks in Yemen. They called for a credible and transparent investigation.
In Geneva, UN Human Rights Office spokesperson Liz Throssell stressed that the attack followed a series of more minor but deadly airstrikes that claimed youngsters' lives last month.
A large number of children were killed yesterday, appallingly, but in July there were all manner of smaller incidents. On the 19th of July, you had 4 children killed when a coalition airstrike struck a farm. On the 30th of July, 2 children were killed when an airstrike hit a motorbike. On the 31st of July, 2 children were killed. They were out with their sheep grazing, and they took a direct hit from an aerial strike.
To date, the UN office has documented more than 17,000 civilian casualties in Yemen since fighting escalated in March 2015, including nearly 6,600 dead and around 10,500 injured. The majority of these casualties, 10,471, were as a result of airstrikes carried out by the Saudi-led coalition, it said in a statement. Since March 2015, Saudi Arabia has led a coalition of Gulf states against Houthi rebels in northern Yemen, after the Iran-backed rebels drove out the U.S.-backed and pro-Saudi government. The UN says the war in Yemen is now the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with more than 22 million people, 3/4 of the population, in desperate need of aid and protection. More than 10,000 civilians have died. 40,000 have been wounded in the war, which has left 15 million Yemenis without access to clean water. The country could also be facing its 3rd major cholera epidemic, especially around Hodeidah, according to the World Health Organization. Eagle News International will be right back.
Business News, this is Cesar Vallejos. Amid a high inflation environment and a 6-month drop in exports, the Philippine economy's growth slowed to 6% in the second quarter, below the full-year target the government reported Thursday. Philippine Statistics Authority data show that the gross domestic product was slower than the 6.6% in the first quarter and 6.7% in the second quarter of last year. The government targets 7 to 8% GDP growth in 2018. Globe Telecom added $100 million in its in-year capital expenditure as it moves forward with upgrading its network to provide first-world internet connectivity in the Philippines. Prior to this new approval, the company's 2018 full-year capex guidance was at $850 million. This additional network spending will bring the 2018 capex to around $950 million, with the additional investment to be spent in the balance of the year. Globe Telecom ended the first half of 2018 with consolidated service revenues of 67.3 billion pesos, with revenues hitting 33.2 billion in the second quarter, up 3% from prior quarter. Net income for the first half of the year stood at 10.1 billion pesos. Sustained top-line performance was due to the continued expansion of the 4G and LTE network and the growing preference of customers toward content-rich offerings and multimedia applications that enrich the Filipino digital lifestyle. Globe's mobile subscriber base totaled 65.1 million as of end June 2018, up 9% from the 59.7 million subscribers in the same period last year. Total home broadband subscriber base now stands at over 1.5 million, or 22% higher from a year ago. Globe continues to aggressively roll out broadband lines, with the company's bid to roll out ultra-fast internet service to 2 million homes by 2020. Commenting on these results, Ernest Cu, President and CEO of Globe Telecom, stated, "We are encouraged by the positive business momentum in the first half of 2018. These results validate our strategy in driving the digital lifestyle of our customers and reaffirm our status as the country's leader in mobile. Our efforts to modernize further our network play a critical role in our company's performance. We believe we are well positioned to compete in this highly challenging market going forward." For 2018, Colliers expects Metro Manila office sector to have a little over 1 million square meters of net take-up, the highest in Metro Manila's history. Midway through 2018, Colliers recorded a net take-up of 641,000 square meters, already higher than the 638,000 square meters posted for the entire 2017, with the strong demand being complemented by record high completion of new office buildings across the country's capital. Colliers attributes the higher than expected take-up to a number of factors. Among the key contributors is the expansion of the business process outsourcing companies that held off plans in 2017. The initial uncertainty in the Manila office market was brought about by the lurch of economic nationalism in the United States, led by President Trump's anti-outsourcing stance, perceived decline in the peace and order situation in the Philippines associated with extrajudicial killings, and delay in the proclamation of the Philippine Economic Zone Authority buildings. The strong take-up in the first half of 2018 indicates that firms' initial concerns have already been addressed. Offshore gaming firms continue to be a major contributor to office demand in Manila. For the first half of 2018, these companies accounted for 24% of total deals, taking up about 182,000 square meters of space. Initially operating within the Bay Area, offshore gaming companies have started to occupy space in other sub-locations within the country's capital, with deals closed in Quezon City and Makati Fringe in the second quarter of 2018. MegaWorld Corporation, the country's third largest property developer, said its net income grew 12% during the first half of the year to 7.51 billion from last year's 6.69 billion. Earnings for the first 2 quarters of the year were buoyed by strong results from all its core businesses, with the hotel business posting a record growth. Revenues also grew, but at a slower pace, to 25.72 billion, a 10% increase from the previous year's 23.24 billion. MegaWorld's hotel businesses grew 10% to a record 750 million from 648 million last year. It recently opened Savoy Hotel Manila in Newport City, adding 684 hotel rooms in its total inventory of 1,744 rooms as of end 2017. The company said that it is ready to supply more rooms to support the government's goal of 10 million tourist arrivals by 2020. That includes ski tourism areas like Cebu, Boracay, and Tagaytay. Tens of thousands of passengers were hit by transport chaos on Friday as Ryanair pilots across Europe went on a coordinated 24-hour strike to push their demands for better pay and conditions at the peak of the busy summer season. The Irish no-frills airline was forced to scrap some 400 out of 2,400 European flights scheduled for Friday as pilots in Ireland, Germany, Belgium, Sweden, and the Netherlands walked off the job. Around 55,000 passengers are affected by strike, said Ryanair, which has offered customers refunds or option of rerouting journey. Ryanair has slammed strikes as unnecessary, but pilots counter that the carrier has refused to engage in a meaningful dialogue about collective labor agreements since it began recognizing unions in December 2017. The unprecedented simultaneous strike action is the latest headache in a turbulent summer for Europe's second-largest airline. Ryanair, which flies in 37 countries and carried 130 million passengers last year, averted widespread December holiday strikes last year by agreeing to recognize trade unions for the first time in its 33-year history. Since then, however, it has struggled to reach agreements. About 300 Ryanair flights were cancelled in July when cabin crews in Belgium, Portugal, and Spain went on strike for 48 hours. South Korean electronics giants Samsung unveiled the new Galaxy Note 9 smartphone Thursday, its latest effort to address flagging sales of the high-functioning gadgets. Boosting the power and the price, Samsung hopes to win back customers in the competitive market.
Oh look, here's my schedule, thanks to Bixby. There is nothing radically new here, and so it's a very expensive phone, and for people who are looking for a premium Android phone, they may well find it quite appealing, but it isn't likely to get people to consider the Note for the very first time.
Samsung did what they needed to do here, which was to show that even though they're number one in the game, they're still in the game on the premium handsets. There's a ton of competition from Apple, and Apple basically owns the premium market. But I think with the Note 9, Samsung's bringing their best foot forward with some very differentiated features that neither Apple or Huawei have.
That's it for Business News. This is Cesar Vallejos and I'm one with 25. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay with us.
Health is our to the garden. A world that brings you back to that natural, carefree feeling of joy and happiness. A place where art becomes your song to strengthen bonds. Creating your moments, kindling your passion. Worth reliving over and over. A world that recaptures the value of life. Breathe. This is your world, your life, your garden.
Letters and Music, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 1:00 hanggang 2:00 ng hapon.
Welcome back. Facebook said it was moving to prevent the sharing of blueprints for 3D printed guns on the social network, which violates its rules on regulated goods. Sharing instructions on how to manufacture firearms using 3D printers or CNC milling machines is not allowed under our commodity standards, according to a Facebook spokesman in response to an AFP inquiry. In line with our policies, we are removing this content from Facebook. The social network added it was working out the range of website links or gun printing content that will be removed. Banning blueprints or instructions for 3D printed guns is in line with the social network's rules on regulated goods, such as firearms, which can only be legally sold or exchanged by licensed dealers. A U.S. gun rights advocate last week was gearing up for a legal fight to be able to publish online blueprints for 3D printed firearms as the White House signaled support for a federal judge's decision to block the venture. Cody Wilson's Texas-based company Defense Distributed had briefly made the blueprints available online, but Seattle-based U.S. District Judge Robert Lasnik granted an injunction to take the material down. The administration of U.S. President Trump last month gave permission for Wilson to publish the blueprints, but the White House subsequently said the president was unaware of the decision and was glad it was being reviewed.
And I like that I can sell you a way to make it easier.
Meanwhile, NASA has postponed until Sunday the launch of its $1.5 billion unmanned Parker solar probe to allow engineers more time to investigate a red flag that was raised in the last moment before liftoff. Now, the problem had to do with a gaseous helium pressure alarm on the spacecraft, according to officials. The next launch window opens at 3:31 local time on Sunday. Scientists hope the spacecraft will revolutionize our understanding of the sun with its flares and eruptions. The size of a small car, the probe is equipped with a carbon composite heat shield to keep its instruments cool enough to operate. It's fitted with solar arrays and electric antennas. It will also carry with it on a memory card the names of more than 1 million people who want to accompany the probe in spirit and cheer it on its way. The probe will use 7 venues flybys over a 7-year period, gradually reducing its orbit around the sun. It will dive into part of the sun's atmosphere, the corona, for the first time, facing the ferocious heat and radiation around 1,300 degrees Celsius. Scientists hope the mission will answer crucial questions concerning space weather. Why is the corona hotter than the sun's surface, and how is the solar wind accelerated? This will also help forecast changes in the space environment that affect technology on Earth, satellite communications, power grid problems, pipeline erosion, radiation exposure on airline flights, and astronaut safety. The mission is expected to last until 2025. In other news, one of the largest population movements in Latin American history is underway from Venezuela, and that is according to UNHCR. On Friday, the UN Refugee Agency confirmed that it's stepping up assistance to neighboring Ecuador, where the influx is accelerating. Spokesperson William Spindler said that many of the new arrivals have endured an odyssey of days and even weeks in precarious conditions, often arriving at the border where they are forced to beg.
The exodus of Venezuelans from the country is one of Latin America's largest mass population movements in history. Since the beginning of the year, some 547,000 Venezuelans have entered Ecuador through the Colombian border at a daily average of between 2,700 and 3,000, men, women, and children. However, the influx is now accelerating, and in the first week of August, some 30,000 Venezuelans entered the country. That's more than 4,000 a day. Many of the Venezuelans are moving on foot in an odyssey of days and even weeks in precarious conditions. Many run out of resources to continue their journey, and left destitute are forced to live rough in public parks and resort to begging and other negative coping mechanisms in order to meet their daily needs.
Now, according to UN Migration Agency, IOM, there has been a 900% increase in the number of Venezuelan nationals living abroad in Latin America from 2015 to 2017, up from 89,000 to 900,000. Worldwide, the number has risen from 700,000 to more than 1.6 million in the same period. Meanwhile, Mexican armed forces seized 2 tons of cocaine after a helicopter forced a speedboat to land on the coast of Guerrero State. An Ecuadorian was detained. In this video broadcast by that institution, one can see from the air the moment in which at least a dozen people who were also on board the boat who managed to escape on the beach. In other news, a group of cows herds a suspect being chased by police in Florida to the edge of a field. The crazy cow chase started when 3 suspects allegedly stole a car in Seminole County, Florida, Tuesday. A police helicopter with an infrared heat camera followed the car until it crashed into a ditch. One female suspect, identified as 46-year-old Jennifer Ann Kaufman, fled on foot and found herself in the middle of the herd of cattle. Take a look. Eagle News International will be right back.
Tungkulin ng MTRCV ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG.
Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Itan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCV, rated responsable.
Welcome to the garden. A world that recaptures the value of life, creating your moments, kindling your passion, worth reliving over and over. This is your world, your life, your garden.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Welcome back. Thousands of volunteer inmate firefighters are helping in the battle against the largest wildfires in California's history. Authorities battling massive wildfires in large swathes of California issued mandatory evacuation orders and health warnings over the worsening air quality as the flames grew ever closer to populated areas. The man suspected of starting one of the blazes was due in court, where he faces life in prison if convicted of arson and other charges. After almost a month of wildfires, the National Weather Service warned that satellite images showed widespread smoke this morning from the western U.S. fires drifting northeastward across the northern Rockies into western and central Canada, and then southward over the northern plains. The Kaibab National Forest Service in neighboring Arizona warned that, quote, wildfires across the west are creating regional haze. But it was Northern California where most air quality alerts were being issued, with warnings of unhealthy conditions for vulnerable groups such as the very young and the old. The Mendocino complex, made of two separate blazes, has been declared the most destructive fire in the state's history. Its largest blaze, the Ranch Fire, was only 53% contained compared to 87% for its Twin River Fire. Further north, the Carr Fire was declared 51% under control after scorching 180,000 acres of land and claiming the lives of 3 firefighters and 5 civilians, making it California's third deadliest fire ever. Now, some inmates even assisted in the effort. The Miramonte jail camp made a fire line to stop the advancing holy fire from consuming homes in the area.
Cutting a 10-foot line around these structures right here to secure these houses from catching on fire. Oh man, you know it's hard, but we make it look easy, man. You know, we just out here trying to get the job done. You know, as firefighters, you know, help protect the community.
Officials have confirmed that Australia's most populous state, New South Wales, is now entirely in drought. Crippling drought is ravaging vast tracts of Australia's pastoral heartlands, decimating herds and putting desperate farmers under intense financial and emotional strain with little relief in sight. While the country is no stranger to big dries and its people have long had a reputation as resilient, the extreme conditions across swaths of Australia's east are the worst in more than 50 years. A smattering of rain earlier this week did little to ease one of the driest starts to the year on record, turning pastures to dust and destroying huge areas of grazing and croplands. It's a scenario repeated across New South Wales state, where agriculture contributes more than 15 billion Australian dollars to the state's economy annually, employing more than 77,000 people. Authorities on Wednesday officially declared the entire strait in drought. Conditions are similarly dire in Queensland to the north, where the state government says nearly 60% of land is suffering drought conditions.
Well, yeah, I was a boy in 65 drought. I was only 16-year-old, come home from school, and that was pretty horrendous drought. That was known to be the father of all droughts, but this one is far worse now. It's definitely because we've had a bigger lead up to it, and it's just going on and on and on. It's, yeah, a lot worse than I've ever seen. Yep. All the climate gurus that know all about the weather still can't tell us when it's going to break. They've got no idea, so we'd run blind, you know, like we just got to plan and hope and pray that it rains. That's all it amounts to.
It is a real worry. I want my boys to come onto the farm. I want them to be 4th generation on this farm, and I really worry about the future now. I really wish that politicians would show some leadership on climate change and come up with some better ideas than what we've got right now. I've used so many different methods that I would have never used before to keep my sheep alive, and you know, to me, I think that policies we have to do something now. We have to, I'm worried that this is a trend that is going to continue.
Iglesia ni Cristo members in Sydney participated in an outreach program called National Tree Planting Day. Our EBC correspondent from Australia, Andrew John Bartlett, reports from Sydney.
Just hours after the Iglesia ni Cristo, or the Church of Christ, celebrated the 104th anniversary of the Church and the 50 years in the West, members of the Church of Christ here in North Sydney, Australia, have once again gathered to participate in an outreach program entitled the National Tree Planting Day.
So how do you guys feel today? With multiple sites across Sydney and throughout Australia, the members of the Church of Christ gathered at Primula Oval, part of the Ku-ring-gai Council area in North Sydney. The members joined dozens of other community groups and families in planting trees in a bid to boost native plant life in the North Sydney area.
I'm Alma Morales from local congregation of North Sydney, and I'm one of the Kadiwa officer. This activity is very interesting and happy because we're not just doing the church activities inside, but we're also doing activity for our social and environmental.
Hi, I'm Brother Dean from the local of North Sydney, and I'm the Kadiwa Vice President of our local.
So what activity are we all joining today?
So we're joining a tree planting activity. So the purpose of this is to also help our environment and also to build a natural habitat for animals around this area.
So why is it important for members of the Church of Christ to participate in activities such as this?
So just as God gives us the good blessings in our life, I believe we should take care of the environment that we've been provided with by helping plant trees and maintaining our environment.
And how does it feel to have activities?
Oh, it definitely makes me feel happy because we're trying to help our future community and our environment as well.
The National Tree Day is a Planet's Ark initiative in which more than 3.8 million people across Australia have planted 24 million trees in the span of 2 decades. It is an interactive way for people of all ages to contribute to nature preservation by encouraging more and more people to be environmentally aware.
By participating in activities such as these, the members of the Church of Christ continue to show their deep desire to help not only the community but also the environment. Reporting from Sydney, Australia, this is Andrew John Bartlett, and I am 1 with 25.
A California jury ordered chemical giant Monsanto to pay nearly $290 million for failing to warn a dying groundskeeper that its weed killer Roundup might cause cancer. Jurors unanimously found that Monsanto, which vowed to appeal, acted with malice and that its weed killers Roundup and the professional grade version Ranger Pro contributed substantially to Dwayne Johnson's terminal illness. Following 8 weeks of trial proceedings, the San Francisco jury ordered Monsanto to pay $250 million in punitive damages along with compensatory damages and other costs, bringing the total figure to nearly $290 million.
And not only this round. First of all, I just want to thank the men and women and everybody on the jury. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for the hard work that they've done and for the days that they spent in that courtroom listening to evidence and listening to two great lawyers and the teams go back and forth. I want to thank them on my behalf and on behalf of my family. I want to thank the jurors first.
Johnson, a California groundskeeper diagnosed in 2014 with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a cancer that affects white blood cells, says he repeatedly used a professional form of Roundup while working at a school in Benicia, California.
Since the beginning of this case, I received a lot of support and a lot of thank you and a lot of prayer and a lot of everything, just good energy from a lot of people that I don't even know, you know, and I'm glad to be here to help with this situation after I learned about Roundup and glyphosate and everything. I'm glad to be here to be able to help with a cause that's way bigger than me. So hopefully this thing will start to get the attention that it needs.
The lawsuit, built on 2015 findings by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, part of the UN World Health Organization, which classified Roundup's main ingredient, glyphosate, as a probable carcinogen, causing the state of California to follow suit. The Vice President of Monsanto, Scott Partridge, says that the jury got it wrong.
Let's start with the verdict. The verdict today, it doesn't change the overwhelming scientific evidence and the 40 years of safe use of glyphosate around the world. It is the most widely used herbicide in the world. It's the most widely studied herbicide in the world. There are over 800 scientific, medical, peer-reviewed, published studies that demonstrate glyphosate is safe and does not cause cancer. We all know that tobacco causes cancer. Glyphosate does not cause cancer. It's been perfectly safe, and that's been demonstrated for more than 4 decades. I don't know how they got it wrong, but they did. They got it wrong.
But Johnson's attorney, Brent Weissner, said the verdict shows the evidence is overwhelming that the product poses danger.
We used to obtain this verdict about 20% of the really important documents that we've discovered in this litigation. We only used a portion of them because Mr. Johnson's case, we wanted to get to trial as soon as we could. But there is a lot more evidence. It's coming. It's going to come down the pipeline, and as soon as we can get it out from under seal, we are going to share it with the press, share it with whoever wants to look at it, because it's really important documents that show, quite frankly, rampant corporate malfeasance by Monsanto. We now have a way forward. That Monsanto now has an option to do right by all the people that have been hurt, and do right by Mr. Johnson, and do right by everybody else who could be affected by this product.
Diagnosed in 2014 with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a cancer that affects white blood cells, Johnson used Ranger Pro repeatedly in his job at a school in Indonesia, California, after being promoted to groundskeeper in 2012. Weissner said Monsanto opted against warning consumers of the risks, and that instead they have fought science by playing down the suspected link between the chemical herbicide and cancer. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., an environmental lawyer, son of the late U.S. Senator, and a member of Johnson's legal team, hugged Johnson after the verdict.
I think it's exactly like the trials. Monsanto for 40 years has been taking the playbook of the tobacco industry, ghostwriting science, buying science, using all the different PR strategies and the legal strategies to confuse the science, to blur the science, and I'm so glad that this jury held them accountable.
Records unsealed earlier by a federal court lent credence to Johnson's claims. Internal company emails with regulators suggested Monsanto had ghostwritten research later attributed to academics. Founded in 1901 in St. Louis, Missouri, Monsanto began producing agrochemicals in the 1940s. It was acquired by Bayer for more than $62 billion in June. Monsanto was one of the companies that produced the defoliant Agent Orange, which has been linked to cancer and other diseases for use by U.S. forces in Vietnam. The company denies responsibility for how the military used the product. INC members in the United Kingdom prepared cookies and biscuits during tea time, a time to meet, bond, and invite non-members to know more about the Iglesia ni Cristo. Annabelle Reynolds reports.
The British public love a cup of tea. Every year, Britain celebrates National Tea Day to honour their tea, and whether it's English breakfast or Earl Grey, it doesn't matter. But what really matters is tea time. INC Cafe is a chance to take time out of your busy day and take a break. INC members in Heathrow, United Kingdom, prepared a selection of beautifully home-baked cakes, pastries and biscuits. In this activity, INC members not just shared their love for the national drink, but also their faith during a Bible study, wherein guests were encouraged to get to know more about the INC teachings. This was followed by the Christian musical performances and poetry readings by the youth members. But the entertainment didn't end there. A friendly baking contest took place, showing a range of skills in baking pastries, biscuits, cookies, and cakes. After seeing outstanding baking skills and tasting those sweet, lovely treats, I finally found my favorite dessert to go nicely with my cup of tea. What's your favorite? I'm Annabelle Reynolds, reporting for EBC UK, and I am 1 with 25.
The UP singing ambassadors coming off a trip from Spain went to Spain, coming off a trip from Berlin rather, went to Spain as they continued their trip in Europe. Take a look.
The journey of the UP singing ambassador continues as they prepare for international choral competitions here in Europe.
After winning the grand prize in Sing Berlin International Choir Festival and competitions held last July 8, 2018, the UP singing ambassadors are preparing for the next competitions in Torrevieja, Spain, Florence, Italy, and Arezzo, Italy. The UP singing ambassadors, headed by Dr. Edgardo L. Manguiat, shared their passion for music to the Filipino communities in Barcelona, Spain, with the performances of classical and modern songs. So how do you feel after winning the Berlin competition?
After the announcement of the grand prize winner in the first Berlin Choral Festival, we were really, truly surprised because I wasn't expecting a first prize, not even a first prize. And it's really fulfilling to see how Filipinos become also very proud that they have some kababayans, some country fellow Filipinos who could make them feel proud that Filipinos are one of the best in the world, that the best. Through music, they're able to eliminate this feeling of discrimination for a third world country. Of course, we know that many Filipinos here in Europe are working for everything, for all types of jobs, and somehow they have this little impression that we are a lesser race. But through music, Europeans, they don't look at economic status. When they see that you're cultured, that you're high, your musicality is high, you gain their respect. And I think winning competitions, nakakatuwa, it's really fulfilling and very happy. We're very glad to do this because somehow in their loneliness abroad, we're able to serenade them. Somehow in their feeling abroad that they're a third type of citizen, through music, we're helping them to somehow uplift the image of our country, the image of our church, the image of our university. And I'm very happy that God has given me this gift, and it is his right to bring it back to Him, the giver, the creator.
have a follow-up report on the competition in Torrevieja. Meanwhile, to the UP Singing Ambassadors, may you have more shining performances in Torrevieja, Spain. From Barcelona, Spain, I'm Lynn Bautista Tumbaga Diaz, and I'm 1 with 25.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here in Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.